so I'll just send him a chat real quick.
Cool. And that HMIS thing is just 5 minutes. Good
Morning.
morning. How you doing, Anthony?
I am doing well. How are you, Eliza?
I'm happy it's Friday. We were just talking about
Yes,
we're excited
Lord.
it's
I thought it
Friday.
was just me. I came in with a
No.
smile.
It's been a long week,
Yeah.
so here we are. I'm excited too because basketball is on again this weekend. I'm a big basketball fan, and I'm
Oh,
excited about the
good.
women's games tonight. So that's given me life this weekend.
I think I'm excited. This will be the first weekend I actually play around in the flower bed outside and try to make it nice
Oh,
again for spring and
yeah. So
all
you're
that
a
stuff.
gardener. Are you a
A
gardener?
little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. I like to grow at least one or two things a year. This time I think I'm gonna focus more on like maybe some herbs and things
Yeah.
that prevent mosquitoes because the
Mm.
mosquitoes here are treacherous. I was like,
Yep.
oh my God.
Yeah. My only recommendation for mosquitoes is what is that company? Murphy's Natural makes good candles, and then they have these sticks, like incense sticks
Yeah.
that I use. And I just like when I'm out in the yard, if I'm like wanting to sit in a chair, I just stick it into the ground and you light them, and they really keep mosquitoes away. They're a local company, I think veteran owned out of Raleigh.
Wow.
It's been my best trick to mosquitoes because I have a culvert that goes right by my house and the water doesn't always flow, it sits. And so
Yep.
no matter what I do in
Mm.
my yard, it's like they just come on over the fence.
Oh my gosh. Do you have um what was I gonna ask? Where the product Murphy's whatever, where do you
Yeah.
buy it?
What do I get?
Where do you buy it?
Oh, now I think
Hey,
they're
Nicole.
carried all sorts of places. Hey, Nicole. You can
Walmart
buy,
and Amazon has them. I use them for my patio.
yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Also like in stores, like I think Target might carry them.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Yeah, but I've had good luck with the incense sticks that they have.
The other trick, if you don't do that, is make sure you have rosemary herb, like but where you're
Thank
sitting
you.
outside because they are deterred from rosemary.
Yeah, I plan to do rosemary and garlic are the two that I plan
Nice.
to embed among the flowers, and hopefully that'll work.
And then you can, season your steaks well when you cook them with your
Right.
rosemary and garlic or whatever it is
Right.
that's a good
That's right.
combo.
That's right.
Hey Lloyd, welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey
Good to be with
Sally.
you.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Lloyd, are you able to join us the whole time, or is it helpful for us to kind of cover that item about HIS early?
I did schedule a call for 11 a.m. I thought a lot of times I think these meetings don't last the full 90 minutes that they were scheduled for, so I did
Okay.
can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we get that in before 11. I know Russ let me know that he was running a few minutes late. Keisha, have you heard from anybody else?
No, I haven't
Okay.
had any request for absence.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I haven't seen any other emails, and I know Sharita confirmed that she got the minutes, so I assume she's coming too.
Nicole, while we're here, I owe you a call to ask some questions uh, related to HMIS that I hope will make your life a lot easier in terms of the way you send reports on a weekly basis. So I'll check with you on that sometime next week. It shouldn't be too hard to do, but
Okay.
it will give you some relief, I think.
That is always good.
Love to hear that, especially on a Friday. I may shoot an email out just as a reminder on the thread we already have.
Melissa or Eliza, are there other, I'm not sure who's on this committee, but are there others we might be able to like text and just say, hey, are you on your way or whatever?
I think
Yes.
Eliza's doing that now, right?
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm sending an email. I think everyone who's here from CD will also receive it.
Okay, perfect.
I know we're expecting that Colin will be here, but we need at least two more for at least the items that need approval.
Right. All right. I just sent off an email, so hopefully folks will be hopping in. Hey, Russ. No problem. I knew you had let me know. We need one more. We need one more person. So you're good. We're waiting.
Have we messaged Sharita and stuff?
I just sent a message on the thread. I don't have Shrita's phone number.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, I've got it all.
okay, I also don't have Ebony's or Jonathan's. So I just shot an email out just saying, hey, be coming.
We can skip ahead to at least like agenda planning if you'd like, just so, because I know we're almost 10 minutes in and I know we have quite a few agenda items.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I'll call the meeting to order at 10:09. And we'll move ahead to, I'm doing that for you, Russ, for the minutes. I've gotten better at it. And we'll skip ahead to the agenda planning. I do think that there's some items that were on the agenda before that for today that we're hoping to put on the agenda for April, but I think we can make that work. So Melissa, do you have the document that Colin normally shares?
While she's doing that, we did get a couple
All
of
right. I
updates.
think when Colin and I talked, I think the one that we already had listed that we definitely wanted to add was for the early childhood task force presentation, and then these were some other items that we had discussed previously. But I'm not sure if there are other items specifically that you're mentioning, Eliza.
Yeah. Anthony, you're about to say something about the
Oh,
email?
I think you're muted.
I was just gonna update that, Ebony said she would be here in less than 5 minutes now. And Jonathan put in an excused absence yesterday.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right. So yes, the thing we definitely have on the agenda for April that we're prioritizing is the early childhood task force presentation. They are queued up to do that and need 30 minutes. So, I think that we can look at what else we have and then think about order, but we definitely need to have that on the agenda. System performance. Okay, HSAC retreat update. Wonderful. So the things that we would need to potentially add from our conversation today, and then we can look at time and what we can move, is if we are moving forward our small change recommendations for government's document, the government's document. I think next meeting, we could open up space to have a conversation about that, but not vote on it as a full HSAC. And I would recommend that we do that no matter when we put it. So if we push it till May, we would not vote on it in May to give people time to have conversations in between meetings. So that's something that we may need to consider. The other thing is this HMIS data exploration piece. Like we would talk about that today, and then we would bring it to the full HSAC in the next meeting. Are there other things folks in the group can think about that need to be on this list for April or May before we kind of move things around to make sure we're not over time in April?
I want to make sure that I'm following your train of thought. So for the governance charter update discussion, you want to move that to May, and then we can add more time for it?
I think it depends on what the group says today. When we have the discussion about those small recommendations, change recommendations, in my ideal world, I think we talk about it in the next meeting and then vote on it in May. But depending on time for this meeting and where we are as an exec team, I'm not totally clear if that will be possible. So my recommendation, what is the Housing First report? Is that from the groups that have been doing the evaluations?
Yes. So the housing first report refers to like the housing first evaluation. Lloyd has done a really great job coordinating everyone to make sure that all the groups are turning in their work. And I think we need a presentation on it. However, right now the agenda is currently full unless we want to move things around. Like I know we have system performance and Pit Hick. If we can kind of condense that a little bit more, we can probably split time to allow for the housing first evaluation report and system performance in the same meeting, or we would have to move one or the other to May. I think those items are Lloyd's. Lloyd, I actually had a question for you about like these. How much time do you think you would need, and do you think that
Yes,
there's space for both?
thanks, Melissa. I'm not sure the Housing First report needs to be made to the entire HSAC. It's kind of up to the executive committee. We are going to be reviewing the Housing First evaluations with the Performance Management Committee at its meeting on April 11th. And I don't know if there needs to be additional reporting to the entire HSAC. It's kind of up to this committee as to whether you want the entire HSAC to hear more about the Housing First evaluation process and the results of that, At this point, we're planning to have a more thorough discussion of it at performance management, and I would suspect something of the performance management quarterly report will be at least referencing the results of the Housing First evaluation.
That's a good point.
For me, the priority items would be to report to the HSAC on PIT, HIC, and system performance.
Okay. And I know also for you, Lloyd, this is your last full meeting. So I'm also want to make sure that if we're moving things to May, that makes sense for the way that the team is changing, because we'll be missing you in May. Russ, do you have any thoughts here? Or I saw Sharita also hop on. Hi, Sharita.
Yeah. Sorry, hang on, I'm trying to get my. So I will say with early childhood task force presentation, if we suddenly need 30 minutes to move to May, I do think they would work with that. That's my impression from the group. I mean, I'm kind of tangentially involved at this point. So if we get in a huge crunch, because I think it's gonna be an important presentation. I want to make sure people got the energy to focus on it. If that makes.
Yep.
The other piece, I kind of agree with the governance charter piece, because depending on the discussion we have, because I've done a little bit more digging, and I'm like, I think there's a couple easy things we could do that wouldn't take a lot of discussion, and that might give us a feel for where people are as a whole before and know how we would frame a discussion in the future.
Okay. Sharita, thoughts?
Because of where I came in to the meeting, I don't even know if I can tangibly give anything
Sure.
that will add to this discussion this time.
Okay. And I admittedly didn't see you when you hopped in. I just saw that you were here. So I just wanted to make sure that giving people space. So how about let's move the Housing First report to May, give performance management time to reflect and see, does it make sense to go to offer something and at what scale? Maybe we put a question mark next to it and then check in with Jonathan following the April meeting.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Is the retreat update? What is the retreat update exactly? Is that just?
So it's today we're going to talk about the feedback that we got during those small group discussions, and one of the things that we had promised is that we would the exec committee would work on pulling action items from that discussion, and some of those responses. So the goal would be that whatever those action items that you guys come up with today, that is what we would bring to the full HSAC for discussion, and if some of those action items involve creating task forces that are tackling specific issues, then we would ask for those volunteers during the full HSAC meeting as well. So the goal is to take action items out of today's meeting and bring that to the full HSAC for the April full meeting.
So okay, so if we're pulling things from the retreat that need to be actionable, but we're trying to figure out how to have a board that's action oriented and creates plans, we need to prioritize getting our kind of like structure sorted before we put a lot of time into potentially creating committees to work on things, because I'm a little concerned that we may take people's good energy around certain action items and put them into groups that we're not going to get a different result than we've gotten before. It seems to be a structural issue more than a topic issue.
And that makes me wonder, is there any feedback from the retreat that connects to like the governance charter piece being an action item?
No, not specifically to the governance charter. Most of the retreat feedback has specifically to do with communication pieces, how people want access to more communication with HSAC. They want to have more influence over policy changes. It was more surrounding that kind of feedback, which has a lot to do with people feeling like they don't have enough time within HSAC meetings to be heard, which is why I think like the idea of creating more opportunities to collect community feedback, to have community collaboration was like the major feedback that we received from the retreat. And that's not necessarily specific to the governance charter. But that is something that is a function of HSAC, that HSAC can create task forces and small groups to work on additional collaborative efforts, or if there are specific community needs that need to be met, HSAC does have the ability to create task forces and small groups that focus on those specific issues. So I do think that is very separate from what the charter updates are. Because I think the charter updates are more structural, and that's not what the community feedback that we got from the small group discussions was.
I hear you, and I think there might be a way for us to frame, like, I think one of the recommendations we have for the change for the governance charter that we talked about in our meeting, bringing forward today for the full group, in my opinion, connects to the idea of having more people involved in the conversation in a strategic way. So I think it might be some of the ways we frame our recommendations that are like the structure that allows for what people have named is important to them, I think. Russ, Sharita, maybe y'all have other thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm not doing my game face very well. I do hear what you're saying, Melissa, but I guess this is one of the few times, like, from years of experience dealing with restructurings or things like this, when people are feeling disconnected, they want more influence in a policy discussions, communication pieces, that is speaking to a serious structural issue. Not exclusively, but I do think we take that energy and get this focused in a way that can harness that energy going forward. Because I mean, we've been working with the structure for 5 years and we're not getting the results that we need. And I think that work you did at the end of the meeting illustrated some of that in a really, really good way. I felt like without punting it too far, we do find a way to connect them, as Eliza's saying, and get some of this governance stuff done, because it's not a super heavy lift based on the conversation we had previously. You know.
Also, hi, Ebony. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through and seeing you. So also, please jump in.
So, Eliza, what was the question exactly that you asked if Russ and I had anything to add to? What's the question?
So now I think we're having a conversation about timing on our schedule. And I think where we're at right now is we have two separate items on our agenda. One is HSAC retreat update, and one is this executive committee governance charter update discussion. And I think we're trying to understand, are those separate items or are they connected? And if they're connected, then how do we prioritize one potentially over the other to keep us moving? And so I think what Melissa is sharing is the HSAC retreat update is a follow-up on what we talked about for the retreat and really pushing us into some action items.
But she was also mentioning something about ability to create working groups.
Yes. So I think that was from the feedback from the HSAC retreat update. There's some pieces that connect to that. I think part of our issue here is we're trying to make the agenda for April before having discussed some of the items that we are potentially putting on the agenda for April as an exec. So let me.
So I would feel more comfortable with us having the discussion that we need to have and getting those results, and then deciding what is relevant for the agenda for April.
I hear you. So we jumped to agenda because we didn't have the numbers to have those discussions. So let's do this, Melissa. Let's let's in April, let's take HSAC retreat update and move it to like either we need to have the executive committee governance charter update discussion, or we need to have the HSAC retreat update, or those things are linked. So put those next to each other, maybe with a slash in between. So we remember that those may be connected, and then we can decide if that's true once we have the conversation. And then I'm hearing from Russ, if we need to move the early childhood task force presentation, we can. And then that, I think, opens up our agenda some. Like, I think we already 30 and 30, so we have maybe 20 more minutes as a part of the governance charter discussion if needed. And then we'll circle back to this once we've had the discussion points we need to have to really understand what our priorities are. Okay, so we're halfway on the agenda. So let's kick back to the beginning of our exec agenda and just let's prioritize items. And I know that Lloyd has to leave, so let's look at the March minutes. And then we'll go straight to Lloyd for the HMIS piece. That should be quick. So any edits to our March exec minutes that Russ sent out, I believe.
The minutes look good,
Okay.
and I said, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Were you telling me to go ahead? Somebody else was getting ready to talk. Who was that?
Sounds like no one. So I'll take a motion if there's no recommendations for changes.
I move that we accept the minutes as written, unless that somebody has some alarming correction that needs to happen.
All right. We have a second for the minutes.
I second.
Thanks, Emily, for a second, and please vote in the chat. Russ and Ebony, can you vote in the chat, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm taking the minutes.
Yeah, no problem.
I got it. Good, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. All right, so the minutes have been approved. And we're gonna move quickly. This item was for Colin. Colin can't make it today, so I'm gonna kick it over to Lloyd for our HMIS database exploration. He's gonna give us a little bit of context.
Thank you. Good morning again to all. So the context is that Durham, as the committee probably knows, has been participating in a joint HMIS implementation with two others, COCs, the balance of state COC, which represents 79 counties in the more rural areas of North Carolina, plus Orange County and Durham are in this 81 county HMIS implementation. Our HMIS lead agency is the North Carolina Coalition on Homelessness. Over the last several years, I think the data center at NCCH has become increasingly, perhaps frustrated is a good word, with the current software that we're using for HMIS. And that software is WellSky. We have been using WellSky's service point software for our HMIS since probably the mid-aughts of this century. Uh, Federal context would be that HUD mandated that COCs implement an HMIS in about 2002, I believe, and Durham began participating always on a regional and statewide level with implementations. We've never, as a COC, had our own separate HMIS. So I reviewed briefly this morning the current governance charter. There are several references to participating in the HMIS with an HMIS implementation with a more regional approach. It doesn't specifically say that the choice of HMIS software will be made by the COC. I think ultimately, according to the current HMIS governing document, the HMIS Advisory Board, in consultation probably with the leadership of NCCH, would have ultimate responsibility for approving a change of software. The reason we're bringing this to this body is that we feel at the COC lead agency that in some ways choice of HMIS software is a more important choice than choosing to go to change HMIS lead agencies, because when a COC changes HMIS software, you are requiring all of your users to start using a new software, to be trained on the use of the new software, to learn how to use it, to learn how to generate reports, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a really significant decision. The process of changing software generally takes probably a year to 2 years. I think the RFP process that the HMIS Advisory Board would be making a decision to change, to develop an RFP or a request for proposals to change software probably would be made in May or June of this year, and then it would probably take about 6 months to develop an RFP to get proposals back in response to that request for proposals, to evaluate them. And then if there would be a decision to actually change HMIS software, that process would unfold over, again, probably a 12 to 18-month period. One of the things, certainly one of the considerations in changing a software would be that ordinarily, I think we would not want to lose any more of the client data that is in the current software than absolutely necessary, or keep that at a minimum. So you've got a whole lot of technical issues that software developers and people who know about these things more than I would be responsible for managing that transition of software and setting the date. So it is a pretty important consideration. We know that there are challenges with any software, but I think at this point we are at the COC lead agency, we're open to considering a change of software, open to looking at what are the challenges with the existing software. I think a big frustration with the current software is I would say are two things. One is that the reporting out of the HMIS continues to be a challenge. Seems kind of clunky at times. A second issue would be that WellSky has a variety of software packages that social service kind of software that various communities are using, but it seems to be really slow in implementing the software updates that HUD requires, and oftentimes it takes them much longer than other software developers need to update their software. HUD does typically submit or publish data standard updates generally in a 2-year cycle, and requires that that updates to the HMIS software be made by the for-profit companies by October 1st of every year, or every other year generally. And WellSky again has not met HUD deadlines for getting the software updated to meet the HUD's new data standards. So that's kind of an overview. Hopefully that made some sense.
Yeah,
If you
thanks,
respond to
Lloyd.
questions.
I think I have a clarity, and you may have said this and I missed it. Is this just Durham? Is this more than Durham? Is this the whole state? And then I think a follow-up question to that is, clearly there must be some benefits to changing this. So, what are the top benefits? And then also, it sounds like there's cost, even if it's not direct cost, it's time. So
Sure.
curious about that.
Sure, thanks.
And
Yeah, so some background on HMIS implementation across the state. We had one statewide HMIS implementation with all 12 continuums of care participating in a statewide HMIS until Durham, Orange County, and the balance of state COCs went together in the 3 COCs, but we broke off, these 3 COCs broke off from an implementation that currently the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness has been managing. Michigan, we went through an RFP process in like 2013 and 2014 and changed the HMS lead agency from the North Carolina Housing Coalition to the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, made them the lead agency. And then in 2018, Durham, Orange County, and the balance of state went into a more regional HMIS implementation, which is with just those 3 COCs under the umbrella of under the leadership of the North Carolina Coalition Against Homelessness as the lead agency. Since then, the other implementation, which is still called the North Carolina HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. Since then, Wake County and Charlotte have also broken off and set up their own local, or just within their COC, they've set up a lead agency. So sometimes in some communities across the country, the COC lead agency is also the HMIS lead agency. That could be an option. We have felt, I think, consistently in Durham that the financial cost of setting up our own HMIS implementation just at the COC level would be significantly more than we're currently paying for the HMIS through the regional implementation that we have.
yes, I
Did I answer the question?
I'm having a hard time following. I think I'm just asking
Yeah.
about when we say HMIS database exploration, is that just Durham doing that, or is that alongside the other folks?
It would be alongside it would be alongside Orange County
Okay.
and the balance of state. So
Got it.
it would continue to be the 3 COCs
Got it.
of this implementation.
And Anthony, I saw you come on camera. Did you want to add something else?
No, just that Lloyd is the current HMIS administrator. As he transitions later in the month, I will take on that role. I
Since,
think there's, I think this really, Lloyd, correct me if I'm wrong, is just for information purposes only. It is being explored, and there's a lot more vetting and a lot more information that's required. I think we're just sort of seed planting right now that, this is in the works and there are conversations happening, but we're probably quite a ways away from any sort of
Right.
decision about it. I happened in the Miami COC to have WellSky as our provider as well, and there were a lot of similar challenges. Some of them we were able to overcome, and some of it had to do with the level of package we had versus some of the other modules that may be available. Some of it has to do with just the sheer struggle of WellSky to keep up. So there's a lot of things to consider in it. And so I think Lloyd planted a great seed, and then we'll continue to update as the process kind of advances, and keep you all posted as well. Lloyd, is that okay? I hope I didn't.
yeah, I think ultimately, more than likely, the advisory board, I would think, is gonna want the approval of the COC boards and or the COC of, of a decision to change software again, because it is a very significant, decision in terms of implementing HMIS within
Right.
the COC.
Today,
Um,
we're not asking for
No.
that. We're asking for temperature check. Can we explore this?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Sharita, I see your hand.
So I think I was just like you, Eliza, trying to get kind of clarity around what we need to do today, or just what we need to know today. I think the piece where Lloyd spoke about the financial cost, I think that's important for us to just really kind of be aware of. And no matter what the decision is, just for future funding requests, needs that will come up later on in the year, should something progress and a change should happen. So, will we get something in writing, like
Yes.
updates about those
Yes.
explorative conversations, just so we can be
Absolutely.
prepared for the train coming, if it's coming?
This committee won't be asked to approve anything without the adequate information.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Russ, sorry, I was muted. Go ahead.
No, I'll just say, yeah, and this kind of thing to me rises a level of like, just a one pager would be really helpful of
Yes.
like, we are in a cooperative with these groups, and this is why we chose it. These are the software options, and this is what we got, and this is what we're exploring. Because this is pretty, I mean, whenever I hear software transition, I'm like, I think it brings back traumas. But very worthwhile conversation, and for us to be supportive, but even just like a half page, one page, just summary, because it seems like
We'll keep it
a
brief,
lot
right?
of interesting implementation. What'd you say? Keep it to half? Did
We'll
you say keep it to
brief.
5?
No, I said we'll keep it brief.
You're fine. No, I mean it as an encouraging thing, just for us to be able to
No, it is,
digest and
yeah.
follow along.
Yeah.
It makes sense because, at the end of the day, most of the people on this call only really care that we have something that's working for everybody, and with everybody. And so I think that's important, and we'll make sure we do a good job of whatever the process is, because it's sort of being led by the lead agency for HMIS, and they are the lead agency of the continuum of care balance of state. So there are a lot of players in this that are going to be exploring this kind of together. So we'll make sure to give you guys adequate updates and information, and probably arrange for even some abbreviated type presentation, just to make sure everybody's comfortable with what happens.
Great. So I'm hearing this is just a moving this forward, an approval from exec to say, yes, we should explore this with an expectation that we will get more information once it's explored further.
Correct.
So if folks are feeling comfortable, I will take a motion.
I move.
Great. Move to approve of the exploration of HMIS database by Sharita, who will second for me.
I'll second.
Russell second. Please vote in the chat.
Thank you.
And thank you, Lloyd, for that update. And it's passed. I know that Ebony may be still off taking care of some things. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Lloyd, for that update. So let's move into governance document, small change recommendations. When I sent the agenda to the exec team, I included those specific recommendations that we brought forward. I will read them. These are what came out of our meeting, and we're bringing them to the full group. If we want to move these forward, we would need to vote on them today and then take them to our full HSAC in the next meeting. And the idea behind these three is they felt like low-hanging fruit, that we could do a little bit of testing around changes, but also getting curious about what types of structure changes could support some of the things that we hear people want to be different. So the three items that we pulled forward are filling 2 seats on the HSAC with people who have lived experience, in addition to the city and county appointed lived experience seats. So what I'm remembering from that one is that there is an empty seat that's been empty for a while, and we have the authority to reassign it. And then that there are these extra seats that we don't have filled right now. So I believe that was the background on that one. So second recommendation was to change the ratio of HSAC members to COC members on subcommittees. Currently, it's 2 to 3 of committees or 2/3 of committees must be HSAC members, and 1/3 can be COC liaisons. The suggestion is to adjust the rules to allow any mix of HSAC and COC members, as long as there is one HSAC member, and the HSAC member must serve as chair, since the chair sits on the HSAC exec committee. That was the second one. The third was around visibility. So there are several new committees, coalitions forming or ongoing committees and coalitions that intersect with the work of the COC. Is it worth exploring a membership drive to encourage these groups to join the COC to reduce the duplication of work and increase collaboration around shared interests? Ideas to help with this outreach effort include creating a simple deliverable to help point people to meetings, subcommittees, public comments, sharing more information about COC and why membership is beneficial. Annual renewals, when they happen, is January, February timeframe, but new members can join anytime. So that piece kind of around visibility. So those are the three. I think we could, talk about those three. We could talk about moving some of those forward and not all of them. So I will open space now to allow folks to share more reflection in between the last meeting and this one. I see a comment in the chat and I see Russ's hand. So Russ, go ahead. Oh, and I see Sarita too. Russ, go ahead.
Just on the first one, I feel like this is really, really low hanging fruit. One, because the ILA already allows us to request that shift, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a county corporate business sector seat that's been open for, I think, a year, at least 9 months. And so I think suggesting someone going into that makes sense. I do wonder, since I think in one of the notes, and Melissa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Angel Vic Lewis terms out in June anyway. I'm wondering if we just actively pursue adding someone to that seat for right now. I'm more hesitant about using the extra seats until we have a fuller conversation about some other potential representation and restructuring. So I feel like those two we can quickly activate and let the count. I think Angel's also a county seat. Activate on that, but also make the recommendation to the county, say, hey, you know, we want to take this and set that as a pattern.
To be fair though, the seats that are like by the county and city, those are interlocal, like on the interlocal. So I would be careful of trying to change seats that are actually like in our governance documents right now. We have 2 available seats. So one of the things that I've been working on with Keisha is updating our directory so that we can make sure that we have like an accurate number of seats so that our, you know, what we're showing you guys is like really accurate. So I did update that directory so that you guys could have a chance to look at it. I also added some of the historical context. So when seats were added, because we did add five seats in 2017 as an amendment. So to the interlocal, or not necessarily an amendment to the interlocal, but as an amendment to our structure for HSAC. So I did add some of that historical context. And then there are 3 seats that were added that are not on the interlocal and that were not a part of that 2017 change. But I believe it was a part of a conversation that exec had in previous years that those seats needed to be added. So I did include all of that information on the directory too, if you guys want me to show you that. But all that being said, we do have 27 seats currently on the HSAC, and we can have a maximum of 29. So there is room to add 2 seats. And I think that the discussion was leaning towards trying to get either, 2 people with lived experience who are involved within our system to fill those seats. I don't know if that's still where you want those seats to go. But you guys can definitely have a discussion about what you'd like to do, because there are two seats that you could create to put people in those spaces. But I would be wary of the seats that are already within the interlocal that are controlled by city and county, and wanting to make changes to that, because that's a longer discussion about interlocal changes that needs to happen for those seats.
So I will just amend one thing, Melissa. When we reviewed the ILA, it allows us, if a seat has remained vacant for an extended period, it's not a matter of changing the designation of the seat permanently, it's overriding the designation of the seat. And so that's what it would allow us to do. We're not changing the ILA. We're actually doing something very much within the ILA that allows us to stop having a vacant seat for the time being, and it can be filled by someone else, someone from another sector, for lack of a better way to put it. So I hear you. Yeah, we're not talking about ILA changes right now. We're actually talking about the opportunity to activate something within it pretty quickly.
I have a question, but I see Melissa's hand is up. Melissa, I don't know. Eliza, you tell me what to do.
That was from before. You're good.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sharita.
I hear what Russ is saying, but would that, fill in that spot at this juncture in the year? It would still require the person to apply for the seat, correct? So by the time the application is done, we're April 5th. If we put out an announcement and the person applies, I don't know when it would come up for like the official, like how the official designation would happen. Would it be June already anyway?
Keisha, I saw you unmute.
Oh, I was just gonna say that they're advertising these vacant seats now for the upcoming HSAC season. So I don't know if that's something that can be in the conversation. I think it closes April 24th, if I'm not mistaken, for the city and the county seats.
Can you tell us what seats they're currently advertising?
Yeah, I have the directory. Just waiting here if you guys wanted to see it. So we have two, in terms of county and city, there's one county business seat, which you guys have already talked about. That's this one here that is vacant. It has been vacant for over a year, like Russ said. It's been a long time that that seat's been vacant. We've been advertising in our agenda. I will say, I don't necessarily know that we've been actively marketing for it. I don't necessarily know that we've been going out and asking specific people to apply for it. But it has been like publicly posted for over a year, that we've been looking for someone for that seat. The other city vacancy is for the faith community seat. Technically, this has been vacant since October when we vacated the person that was previously in that seat for not attending meetings. But the city never advertised it. So we're working with the city clerk's office right now to make sure that this gets advertised, but there is a faith community city seat that's currently vacant as well. So those are two seats that are vacant that people are eligible to apply for publicly. And then the other vacant seat is the victim services provider, for which usually we have someone from Durham Crisis Response Center to fill that position. So that was formerly Damian Talley's seat, I believe. And he no longer works with the DCRC.
So what I'm hearing is we may need more time to talk about this first recommendation, and that now would not be the time to move that forward around filling some of these seats. I think first we started with filling 2 seats, not the seats that Melissa's showing, but the recommendation that we started with this conversation. Filling 2 seats with folks that have lived experience. I think then Russ shifted us into maybe it's just 1 seat. And I think now we're at a little bit different conversation around let's fill the seats that are empty. So what I'm hearing is this first recommendation that came forward from this group that met in person is not one that we're ready to move forward. And that we're looking at our vacancies, which is connected to but different than small governance changes conversation. So we can make a motion if someone wants to make a motion and see where people are landing, or if folks want to share more, but it sounds like maybe it's not time.
I guess the question, just back to Sharita, is the concern that we would not have someone until June? I mean, it's April now.
I'm just acknowledging the fact that for that seat, there is a process that has to be followed, and I don't know how soon the person would be placed, and would it already be June, and the open seat that's already been advertised for the new year. You get what I'm saying? Like,
I think are you talking about like the term limits? Is that like where you're going, Sharita?
well, no, what Russ was saying was that in the ILA, we could, if the person is not in their seat, we do have the ability to appoint somebody to the seat. My question is, does that person have to have somebody fill that seat because the person is not active? So my thing is, does the person still have to apply through the normal process to be considered for a candidate for the slot? And if so, by the time they do selections, will it be June already? And Keisha has already added that the application for the new term starting in July is already out. And they're already in the process of reviewing. So that was all I was asking. But then I also put a question in the chat about if we do decide to move forward on these additional lived experience seats so that we don't leave people out, will we be lowering the barrier or the process for people who are interested in that seat to fill the seat? Do you get what I'm saying? So just, it's almost like tandem questions, because if we fill this position, can we just appoint somebody to it, or do they have to go through the process for Angela Vick Lewis's spot? You know, those are the questions that I'm asking. That's
Who
all.
would have to go through the
Angela Vick
process for
Lewis's
Angel Vick
spot is
Lewis?
already being advertised. That's the one under the former homeless, the lived experience position I put in the chat. That's the seat that they're advertising, along with the faith-based. And I pulled that from the county's announcement.
Right, but they're advertising that because her term is going to be up in June. So they have to start advertising to get new applicants for after June. But what we're talking about right now is the ILA would allow us to fill the seat prior to June. Does the person have to go through the process, the same process that Angela did to get designated? Do they have to go through that process and be looked at and considered for the county seat by the county commissioners, or however that process is done? Or can we just appoint somebody for the seat if we want to fill it before the expiration of Angela Vick Lewis's term?
Unless I'm reading it wrong, the interlocal doesn't necessarily describe the process for how HSAC would appoint. But I just to be clear, we're not talking about Angela's spot because Angela still has that spot, so it hasn't been vacant for a year. So that's not even something that we can consider filling as HSAC. I think we're Russ was mentioning like the Durham County business seat because that seat's been open for over a year and has been advertised for over a year and has not been filled. So the county has not made headway with that seat.
Okay, so let me repeat myself again, to be very clear. What I am not doing today is supporting an expedited process to convert the last two open seats that the HSAC can determine. So I am not supportive of that. I am supportive of, as much as possible, expediting a process to get 2 more active people with lived experience onto the HSAC. Journey 1 is we notify the county that that seat has been open and it's within our purview to request that it be converted, and that we want it converted in this case, not permanently, because the ILA does not allow that. We want it converted for a person with lived experience, and we will bring forth a recommendation, however that part works. Anthony, lead team, however that works. The second piece being, we should be actively recruiting someone anyway for Angela's seat because it's 6 weeks away from the deadline. Support that. So she's not been able to be involved for many years.
Let me say this.
Gain of 2.
Russ, I'm sorry. I asked Keisha in the chat. So when they sent that to her, they also sent a deadline, and the deadline says May 30th, 2017. So I am having Keisha to check if they hadn't sent her erroneously an outdated announcement or something like that. So, it sounds like there's more to do. I know Keisha and I are starting to work on membership items, and we have a couple of time slots next week to visit that. So my sentiment is kind of where Russ is a little bit, where it's not something we sort of rush into, but we do support the lived experience folks having a pathway to fill some slots as they come up. So I think we got to do a little bit of checking.
So let's move forward because it's 11:03 and it really doesn't sound like now is the time to vote on this. I think if Anthony, you can get us some more information about process, if we're going to recommend reassigning, or I don't know the right verbiage. What's the word, Russ, you used? Not changing the seat, but
basically overriding the designation.
Overriding the designation. What is the process we need to follow? And we will circle back to this next exec. To quickly go through, because we're not going to have time for just a ton of discussion on the next 2 items. So I just need to get a read on, are the next 2 recommendations something that we're ready to move forward on or no? So the next one is changing the ratio of HSAC members to COC members on the subcommittees. Basically getting rid of the 2-to-3 ratio, or 2/3 to 1/3 ratio, and having a stipulation that there has to be at least one HSAC member on each subcommittee, and that HSAC member would have to be the chair. So if there are, if you folks are feeling good, I'll take a motion. If folks are saying, no, we need to talk about this more, then we will need to kick that to our next meeting.
I really quickly, I did put something in the chat just saying that we can move the retreat discussion to next exec meeting if you'd like, so that we can have more time to talk about these governance changes, because I do think that at least some of this needs to be hashed out today. And then we can, with that, we'll move the retreat agenda item to a future planning discussion as well.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. So thoughts on this second item? Concerns? Excitement?
I just okay, go ahead, Russ. I was just gonna say, just as a heads up, from our experience in the recruitment of people to participate, because I think the ratio is changing. For context, for those that may not have heard this before, is because it's hard to recruit committee members with 2/3 having to be already on HSAC. And so this change will allow the proper representation from HSAC on the committees, but open the committees up to have additional people that may not necessarily be on HSAC. So that is something I think would be an important step for us to do, because it has limited in the past our ability to staff committees, because 2/3 have to be HSAC. So that is a change I think is important.
So I'm in support of the change. However, I don't have faith that it's gonna make that much of a difference, because our meetings are open, and I feel like if people were truly interested in being a part of it, they would
Yeah.
already be coming to the meetings.
Yep.
But it's low hanging fruit, and if you guys want to try it, I'm
It
all
is.
for
Thank
it.
you, Sharita, because we are about to do a little bit more with visibility, and we are about to be a little bit more proactive around membership for COC. So I think if we're able to pull that off, and getting with groups like SAID and others who are coming up and developing these collaborations, hopefully we will have a better opportunity to engage more folks and different folks than we have before. So I'm hoping that we're able to pull people in from that effort that Keisha and I will be up to next week.
I'm supportive, so I'll make a motion that we change the composition requirement for the HSAC subcommittees to require just one HSAC member. That the motion we need. I think
And I think with a requirement that if there is one member, that member is chair. I would just add that in there.
Right. Yes.
So Russ has made a motion.
I will second Russ's motion. I'm a little bit worried about that, because that actually might be a deterrent for HSAC members to join. Let's say the committee is comprised mostly of non-HSAC members, and the person that is a HSAC member wants to be a member but doesn't want to be the chair. I'm just saying. But I will second the motion so we can test it out.
So we're also saying that there can be more than one.
Yes.
Just has to at least be one HSAC member, because HSAC members are the ones that are allowed to be on exec. So there can certainly be more than one HSAC member on a committee, but it would not be required for COC members to be on the committee. Okay, so we have a motion that Russ has made. Sharita, did you second that? I just want to make sure.
I second it.
Okay. Thank you. So the motion on the floor is to change the ratios for HSAC members to COC members on our subcommittees, that we would no longer have ratios, that we would have at least one HSAC member on each subcommittee, and with a requirement that if there is only one, that that one would need to be chair. Please vote in the chat. Oh, Anthony, you're muted.
And for language purposes, I want to clarify standing committees versus subcommittees.
Thank you. Yes, this is only standing committees. So we did use subcommittees here. You're right. So we're talking about performance management and policy and planning. So you can vote in the chat, yes, no, or abstain. Sharita, you got a question?
Would there be attendance requirements for these folks? Because I don't want people to say, yeah, I'm a member, but then they don't come to meetings. So I just think that we need to be thinking about all of those things if somebody commits. And we need to be thinking about if they commit and then they don't show up, what do we do?
Right. So I would say we need to be really clear that every other requirement is the same of members of these standing committees. The only thing we're changing is access to be on them versus to be in the room more an observer and sometimes in the participant role. Being clear that we're opening up participation to more COC members. Does that sound right, Anthony? Okay. So when we bring this,
Sorry.
yeah, I saw you nodding and then I was like, let me check in. So when we bring this as one item recommendation to full HSAC, let's be real clear about that. Thanks, Sharita. All right, great. The last one is around visibility. I'm unclear here if we need to vote on this item. So I just maybe understanding that this is something that exec thinks is important. And it sounds like we're already kind of thinking about this in terms of what Anthony has shared. So
Yes.
just want to touch base on that and any thoughts that maybe would be helpful for Anthony to think about. I think you mentioned
it's more for awareness and also for, you know, when this goes before the HSAC, I think it's important to educate those folks that we are in a recruitment season of membership, that we are attempting to do more collaborative outreach to others to bring them into the COC fold and kind of have them participating. So even for full HSAC purposes, those organizations that they know of or that they work with that serve homeless people that are not necessarily members of our COC should be encouraged to join and become a part. So it's really just a full outreach effort to bring people in and for us to be setting the tone of what happens in the COC.
Great. Anything else that exec members want to add? Russ.
A very quick question, Anthony. Would it be helpful? I mean, a number of us get requests from the, as I call them, and housing subcommittees that seem to be popping up around town. Would it be helpful to send those to you or someone on the team? Just, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of mapping of why these other groups,
Yes, absolutely.
as they germinate and pop up, and what they're trying to focus on, so that we can kind of tailor the marketing flack.
Perfect.
Okay.
You can send them to either myself and or Keisha.
Okay.
The both of us will be working on it together, and we will be making it all make sense.
I love it. All right. So we had a motion that passed around our second recommendation of changing the ratios for our standing committees. And then we will bring forward a little bit of conversation around visibility, just so folks are aware that's something we're targeting, interested in, working on. All right. So great. And then we will follow back up in our next meeting to have a conversation around the seats, get some follow-up information from Anthony on that. So we have about 15 minutes left till 11:30. What we have left on our agenda is we need to circle back to our full HSAC agenda planning for April. We're going to move the retreat conversation, thank you, Melissa, to our next exec meeting. And then I'm curious if this committee leadership open seats conversation, we briefly looked at that. So Melissa, does it make sense for us to go back to agenda first and then see if we have time for this last item, even if it's just looking at it quickly for the next time? Or is there something on our agenda that for next full meeting that we would need to look at that chart that you created first?
I don't see anything necessarily that we need to look at that chart first for the agenda. Other than you're gonna want to like talk about, people applying for seats.
Yeah,
That's about
absolutely.
it. But I do, I can share my screen again for the agenda. Hold on.
Yeah. I think we just need to confirm. I think we're there. So we'll performance management report, approval of minutes. We do need to have the governance charter discussion. Thank you. You've moved the HSAC retreat update to May. So I think now looking at the agenda, I think we're going to need more time for this governance charter update discussion. And we've got a little bit of time, but I'm curious about how other folks are feeling. Like, is the system performance conversation going to take the full 30 minutes? Do we need to talk to early childhood and see if we can move them to May?
Tasha did say she can move if we need her to. I checked.
Sure. Okay.
I was going to say too, I think that if you do move the early childhood discussion, it would allow at least some time for Lloyd to give the Housing First report in April. At least a little bit of time for that, just because this is his last meeting. So if we wanted him to provide the Housing First evaluation, we would need that done in April.
So I think my main concern with our current agenda is a question around, we spent some time in an in-person meeting having a conversation about these recommendations. Now we just spent more time chatting about that. And we're not going to be asking people to vote on these recommendations. We're just having a conversation about them. And so do y'all think we're going to need more than 20 minutes to have a conversation about those recommendations, it being the first time we're really bringing this and talking about it at full HSAC? Even though now it's one, it is new.
Eliza, my apology. I missed the first part of what you said.
Yeah, no problem. Just, we've spent a lot of time talking about this as an exec. So I could use the team's support around, right now we have 20 minutes for this conversation. It's one recommendation really that we're bringing forward because the other is more of an update around visibility. Is 20 minutes enough time, or do we need more time?
Oh, quite honestly, the issue is super crystal clear. Like 20 minutes to me sounds like twice as long as we probably need, to be honest.
Okay.
But I don't know what the discussion may be from other folks, but I think everybody here is clear why we're thinking this way.
Sure. So I'm just, it's taken us a bit to get here. So I'm curious, with a group that hasn't been a part of these conversations,
right?
Do we feel like, from what we know, that 20 minutes is enough, or do we need more time? Because I think that activates us into moving early childhood presentation or not moving it.
I think it depends on like what you're bringing. If you're bringing just the items that you guys were able to get through today, so visibility specifically and just the expansion of for standing committees, I think that is completely doable in 20 minutes. I think if you're trying to bring the discussion about seats changes, that's where you're going to need more time. I think 20 minutes is more than enough though for the two recommendations that you are bringing to HSAC.
Yeah, we are not ready to talk about seat changes. We do not have agreement here, so that will not be an item that we talk about at the full full HSAC meeting. So I'm hearing 20 minutes is enough. So this agenda is full, and is it doable? This is where I miss Colin.
I do think so. I think my question was more so, do we want to switch the housing first with the early childhood so that Lloyd can give it before he heads off? Since he's been the one leading the housing first evaluation, if that makes sense. So like Lloyd has been leading all of the coordination effort for the housing first evaluation. So I think it makes the most sense for him to be the one to give that presentation. So it would make more sense that we prioritize that for April versus the early childhood that can be done in May, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I just want to circle back. I hear you. And circling back to the conversation we had earlier, that presentation is happening to performance management in April. So I think there may be an adjusted shorter presentation, or performance management may include something in their quarterly report update. I think that's what we said earlier. And I think there's also a question around transition on the team. So that's an item that would be transitioning to Anthony. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I think between you, Anthony, and you, Lloyd, what feels best from y'all's perspective? Like, is the handoff doable, like possible if a presentation is put on the schedule for May, or does that make it much more complicated?
I believe the handoff is doable. I put in the chat that I believe Jonathan could also talk about the housing first evaluation. I can certainly make sure that either Jonathan or Anthony are prepared, is prepared to discuss it more in depth at the May meeting. Can make sure they're prepared to do that before I depart.
Okay,
And I'm happy to
Anthony.
do so. Although I do appreciate Melissa's encouragement. I'm grateful.
Yes, absolutely. Anthony, is that okay? Okay. All righty. So I'm hearing it's possible. I do appreciate you bringing that up, Melissa. But I am curious about, I want to let performance management get that presentation if possible, and then move from there. So I think we have our agenda set for April. And we can leave the early childhood presentation. Let's just, y'all may need to think about order. I don't know if we got it in the right order. So I would recommend putting the governance charter update at the end because it's just a conversation. And then
Typically, we've always put voted items first because of quorum, and we always try to have the most number of people on the meeting when we vote. So I would keep anything that we're voting on at the beginning of the agenda.
Sure. So I think the only thing we're voting on is minutes. So I think minutes, then the early childhood task force presentation, then system performance, then the governance charter discussion. Because if it goes beyond 20 minutes, we'll run out of time and we'll keep talking next meeting. All right, thank you. So just recognizing the chat, is it possible, Melissa, to get this directory sent over email so that we can look at it before our next meeting?
Sure, I can ask Keisha to send it with the reminder email.
Great. I think, Keisha, if you're able to send, if it's ready to go and you're able to send that sooner rather than later, then folks will have time to review before the next meeting, if that's possible.
Will do. I'll send it.
Great. Thank you. Wonderful. Whoever, yep, I was gonna say screen still being shared. Okay. The only other thing, since we've got 5 minutes, that I want to flag is there was some conversation about the Medicaid transformation presentation in our last meeting, and we have not reached out and asked for that in terms of an upcoming date to get that presentation from Ann Oshel and or Fred Johnson. So I think that's something we should be thinking about. I'm not clear who makes that that ask. So just want to check in about that piece because it sounded like that might be helpful as an upcoming presentation to HSAC.
I'm willing to make the presentation. I mean, Eliza, you saw a version of it a couple of weeks ago with our board from Ann. So it'd be along those lines.
Okay, so you're saying you could make the presentation about it for HSAC?
No, I could make the contact.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I thought, and I was like,
No.
wow.
Absolutely not. I can pretend many things, but not that. So
Well, I've heard I need to get the presentation multiple times, so I'm ready to continue absorbing. Thank you for making that connection, Russ. And Russ should, do you want to just maybe put me and Colin on that?
that's fine.
Okay, and then you would be reaching out to Ann and Fred?
I can do either. We've had presentations with Ann tends to be a little bit in sense higher level and kind of explains a lot of the alliance stuff and then the implications. Ed's is pretty focused on the kind of healthy opportunity piece locally. So
Okay.
yeah, it kind of depends on how, and we can get Ann to dial it down a little bit more if we want.
Okay. So I think also there's a question about what might be the best thing to start with for HSAC. So maybe asking that question. Great. Lloyd, I saw you come back on camera. Did you want to share something?
I think you're muted, Lloyd, if you're talking.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Russ.
You're good.
Pointed that out. All right. I'm good.
All right. Okay. So we did not get to some items today, and we will have that on our next exec agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the group before we adjourn?
Just while Keisha and Melissa are here, I still need the info from the February 27th full meeting, the meeting that happened after the retreat, in order to create the minutes for that. I've checked my junk in different things. I don't seem to have that yet. Then I can get the minutes for February done. I have the March one, thank you. That already came through.
Anything else for the good of the group? All right. Well, thank you so much, Melissa. I know there was a lot of pieces that you were holding for Colin today, so thank you. And also thank you to Lloyd. I think we got through some good stuff today. I'm excited about bringing these recommendations forward and having the conversation with a larger group. Given that and no other comments, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Thanks, Russ. Do I have a second? No one wants to leave.
I second.
Thanks, Sharita, and the motion and the meeting's adjourned at 11:28. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend.